Okay, today we're going to be tying a EEl Punt, one of my favorite Ken Abrames fly. A very simple and easy fly to tie as well. So before we start, I highly recommend checking out Striper Moon. It's one of my favorite fly fishing books of all time, written by Ken Abrames. Absolutely fantastic book. It may be very hard to find this in print. They're pretty expensive, but perhaps you can find it online. But the EEl Punt here is what we're going to be tying. A very simple fly, just utilizing some Flatwing tied hackle and then some palmered softer hackle up front, and a great fly for fishing at night. So I highly recommend checking out Striper Moon, and thank you for everyone tuning in. Let's get into the materials. Okay, for materials, my trusty Fiskers here. I have some 210 denier flat wax nylon. You can use whatever color you like. We have some simple Bucktail here. This is just going to give us a little support for the hackle that we're going to be tying in. For the hooks, we're actually using Eagle Claw 254, which this is an old school hook. This is the main hook that Ray Bondero and Ken Abrames use in their Flatwing style flies and their streamers. So a very light hook with a pretty strong wire, but it doesn't weigh too much, so you're able to swing flies without them sinking too drastically and stuff like that, because the material, we don't use a lot of material in Flatwing tying. We have some simple Chinese saddle hackle here. This is what we're going to use to palmer the front of the fly. You could always use some of the larger, softer hackle that you find on your patches as well. And then speaking of Flatwing saddle patches, I have some different patches here. The whole idea behind Flatwing hackle a lot of times is that it's just very thin and supple. It's going to move a lot in the water. We don't want feathers that are too wide and have too much webbing on there. So generally just a thinner hackle. You don't have to always go with these ultra thin ones. I kind of like a mix where it's essentially something like this. You know what I mean? So we have some different saddle hackle here. I have some white. This is the Ewing patch. You can find these. These are half patches. Still a little expensive, but pretty decent. So we got some pink, some white, and some olives. But traditionally this fly is tied in darker colors like black or black and purple. But this is also a great fly for swinging during the day as well. So we're going to be tying this in a lighter color for one of my creeks in the back here. Oh, almost forgot. And last but not least, just any sort of head cement to seal the thread in. Almost forgot to mention, but we have some flashabou here. So really any sort of flash that you like, but traditionally I've always used flashabou, and that's, I believe it was used with Flatwings, but whatever flash you like. So I just have some pink and blue here that I grabbed. All right, first things first, we're going to take our thread here and work this towards the hook shank, or the hook point, I'm sorry. We'll just cover the shank here with some thread to give ourselves a base to put some material down. But we're just going to take a little pinch of Bucktail here, not too much, but just enough to give us a little support here. Cut this Bucktail, we'll pull some of the shorter hairs out. And I'm actually going to just taper these real quick because some of them are longer than I want. And we'll just lay some Bucktail down as a little bit of a support. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tie this right around where the hook point is, like so. And all this is going to do is essentially give us a nice little collar of Bucktail, a little pillow for our feathers, just to stop them from fouling as much. We're going to start off with a little white, pink. Now, traditionally, this fly was tied with black and purple, or just all black. Works great at night. So we're actually going to start with a single white piece of hackle here. And I'm probably going to do 3 pieces of hackle in total. We'll keep this one fairly short, this white piece. And the whole idea with Flatwings is we're tying the feathers flat. So as opposed to tying them sideways like a traditional deceiver, we're going to be tying them flat. And a lot of times the idea behind this is that the fish will be seeing this fly from underneath, and the movement of the hackle is insane in the water. You'll see once we put it in the swim tank. Now, a little trick, you can strip the quill down a little bit, get to where you want to tie it, and then I like to do a loose tie to get it secured, maybe 1 or 2. And then you can always manipulate it. This is laying down nice and flat. You can always pull it, adjust the length, and then what you do when you get it nice, you can move forward and then tie it down tighter, because if you wrap too hard down on the hackle, it'll actually twist it. Let's go ahead and take a pink one. Now this patch is getting pretty worn out, but there should be a hackle or two for me to use here. Let me see what we got. I'll strip off this pink hackle, and I'm going to go ahead and make this just a little bit longer, maybe like 1/4 of an inch, something like that, than the white, because we're going to go with some olive on top. This feather's a little beat up, but that's okay. We're getting towards the end of this pink patch. So you can see we lay down that pink hackle. It's just a little bit longer than the white hackle here. And we're slowly increasing that length. And again, tying these feathers flat is the key to a flatwing. So now we can go ahead. You can tie some flash in now if you'd like. I like to keep it pretty sparse. Now I'm going to take some of this. I have some loose pink flash here in a bag that fell out of the little metal clip at some point. So I'm just going to take a couple pieces of pink flashabou here. Now one thing I like to do is keep it pretty sparse, right? We don't want too much flash, and we also don't want it to be too long. So I'm just going to take this, loop it. I have 2 pieces here, 3 pieces. When you fold it in half, it's going to double. And I like to cut this a little bit longer than that pink hackle. That flash is just right behind that hackle like that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to finish it off with a single olive feather here. So I'll try and find an olive feather that I like in this patch. This one looks pretty good, I think, for our purposes. And this last feather is going to be a tad longer than the pink one as well. So we're just slowly increasing the length of these feathers as we tie them in, this hackle. And again, we want to tie it flat. You'll see there's always a natural, if you look at the feather, there's a natural curve to where it wants to, this is upside down, it wants to sit a particular way. The feathers curve and they want to lay down. So always tie the feather, make sure you have it the right way, get it to where you want it, and get your thread to the right spot. Make sure you tie your flatwing hackle the right way up. And there we go. This is our, pretty much this is a basic flatwing tail. Now if you'd like, I do have a little of this. I just grabbed some random blue flash here. I'm just going to take a piece of this. I'll take like 1 or 2 pieces and tie this in as well on top. Just take 2 pieces, do the same deal we did last time, fold it over, loop it, tie back, and then trim it just a little bit longer than the olive this time. All right, so now what we can do is we can palmer some hackle to finish this fly off. Now, you know what? I'll show you just as a good start. We'll start off with one of these softer hackle that's on the patch here. You can see one of these smaller ones. You can use these if you'd like, but I'm also going to, we'll take one of those, put it aside. I have some Chinese saddle hackle here, picked up from Whitewater Outfitters. Shout out to Whitewater. So what we'll do is, this is a little darker, but we'll start off with some of this lighter olive from the patch, and then we'll move up to some darker olive. So depending on the size of the fly, right, the size of the head and stuff we're looking for, you can, the width of the feather is going to change that and adjust that. So we don't want to go with anything too thin, right? Something like this is a pretty good size for this sort of eel punt. You could go a little bit smaller if you'd like. Probably use that as the last one. I kind of like to make the width of the head a little bit larger near the front. That's the idea. I'm just trying to find the right width hackle here to use. This one actually looks pretty good for our second one. We'll probably do like 3 pieces of hackle here. You could use different colors as well. You can see this one here is a little wider than this hackle, so I'm probably going to start with this lighter piece and palmer this, then go to this one, which is a little bit wider and darker, and this last piece, which is ended up being the darkest and widest one. So even the head will have a slight taper to it in the size of the hackle as we palmer it. We'll start off with this thinner piece, this lighter color, and I don't mind if I actually palmer some of this thicker material as well. And the way you palmer hackle is we're just going to tie it in. And again, the natural curve of the feather, we want to work with the curve. Now, one thing we could do real quick is just take a little bit of head cement, I forgot, and we want to secure that flatwing tie. We'll just give it a quick second to dry. And now what I'm going to do is, so you see, this is the front of the feather, this is the back, and see how the feather curves in that way. So I like to twist the feather so the front of the fly is facing the front of the hook. And then I take the material and I pull it back like this. See how I let go? So what I do is I try and pull the material naturally the way that it wants to go inward. And then I'm just going to wrap it. And as I wrap it, I'm just going to guide it so that that material lays down naturally and doesn't get wrapped on itself. And one thing you can do is kind of pull some of the feathers back if you don't want too much of that fluff. And then we're just going to wrap back and secure that. We could, right now is a good time as well to take a little bit more head cement, tie that in. The whole idea is we want to use fairly soft hackle for this because the soft hackle is going to be moving a lot in the water. And I like the heads to be a little bit larger on this. You can go much thinner if you're, for instance, going for sand eels. You probably want to go very light on the head, if not at all, and just tie the flatwing hackle and wrap some body braid like the EEl. I mean I forgot the name of that particular fly. I'll have to look. For those matchbox sand eels, matchstick sand eels. So we're going to take this, and again, the same sort of thing. I'm just going to pull the material the way that it wants to lay. And just guide it as I wrap it. Making sure I don't wrap over itself. I'm actually going to separate some of this here. You don't want to get to the part to where the quill is too thick, so you don't add up building too much material on the body. And again, I like having that back part of the hackle where it's nice and soft because this is where we get a lot of the action from on this fly. And let's go ahead and tie our last one in here. We might have room for one more, a little bit of color, but we'll see. Or just one more olive hackle. But I think we can make this work. Again, we're just trying to make sure that hackle doesn't wrap over itself in a way that it's going to bunch up those feathers, that nice soft feathers. Just secure that down, make sure it's nice and tight. Give it a good wrap. Of course, we're going to cut it and then wrap over and wrap back as well a little bit. Not too far though, so we keep this nice head. And there we go. That's pretty much it. Very simple. We're going to throw a whip finish on here. We'll do a couple close-ups and then we'll throw it in the swim tank. Very easy fly, very simple fly. Doesn't rely on too many crazy techniques or materials. Very old school. You find a lot of Ken Abrames fly tying. The flatwing style is based off of salmon flies, things like that, which is also a reason why I'm a fan of David Nelson and his squimpish style of tying, because it's very reminiscent of certain salmon and steelhead flies and whatnot. So it's a very fun way of tying for striped bass, but it's also one of the funnest ways of fishing for striped bass, in my opinion. Fishing longer rods, softer action, floating lines, 10-foot leaders, and possibly dropper loops with different flies, and taking this and swinging it, or grease line fishing, wet fishing, or wet fly fishing. Essentially techniques that you would use in trout or salmon or steelhead, you can use for striped bass that hold up in the current, in structure, and things like that. And a lot of times you can just mend the line and let the fly swim naturally down current, and you'll have the fish come up and take it almost like a trout, so you don't have to sit there and strip all the time. It definitely opened up my mind in terms of in terms of fly fishing in this sort of manner. So I highly recommend checking out Striper Moon. But hopefully you enjoyed it and appreciate it. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the channel. We have new fly tying videos hopefully coming out every week. And until next time, tight lines.